Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move into some more technical aspects of pesticides and labels and caution words. How many of you are familiar with the term LD50? A fair number of you are, and that's good. I kind of have to go by what my notes say because I don't have this kind of background. But LD50, lethal dose 50, is the dose that will kill 50% of a test sample population. And rats have been used to test LD50 in the past. I don't know if they still are. Your LD50 is given in milligrams per kilogram, milligrams of substance per kilogram of body weight. And the whole point of LD50, correct me if this is not right, tells about the exposure or how much it will take to kill you. So you want to know the LD50 so that you can put the right cautionary words, or the manufacturer can put the right cautionary words on the product label. Okay. Okay, milligrams per kilogram. A milligram is just this very, very small amount, and 30,000 milligrams make an ounce. A small shot glass is about an ounce, so that gives you an idea of how many milligrams it would have. A kilogram is 2.2 pounds, and so it would take, it's a little over 68 kilograms to make 150 pounds. Okay, this is all the background. So, what would it take to kill a 150-pound person? Okay, here's our background again. Here's, oh, actually it's a 140-pound person. Okay, we'll take the example of boric acid, which has an LD50 of 10,000 milligrams per kilogram, so quite a bit. And according to the formulation, it would take 22 ounces of boric acid to kill this 140-pound person. Okay, so that's quite a bit. That's over a pound. What about rotenone, on the other hand? Its LD50 is quite a bit lower, 132 to 1,500. So to kill this 140-pound person would take, it could take under an ounce to 3 ounces of rotenone. So obviously, the rotenone is more dangerous because it takes less to kill. So the lower the LD50, the more dangerous it is. Okay, so manufacturers use the LD50 to come up with their signal words, the caution, warning, or danger. And this is the toxicity to the user, not to the pest. So the caution is over 1,000 milligrams per kilogram. Warning is 50 to 1,000, and danger is less than 50. So danger, of course, is the most dangerous. Here is a listing of several substances, including sugar, and how toxic they are. So we take quite a bit of sugar to kill these rats, 50% of the rats. And even it shows glyphosate has a low caution signal word. I'd still be pretty careful. It's lower than salt. Malathion should be safer than aspirin. So you can see that these products, the one that's most toxic on this list is botulism, the food poisoning. You hear about people dying from food poisoning. Dioxin is another pretty bad one. So that's just kind of a quick overview of LD50 and how they come up with those signal words based on the toxicity of the product. There's a couple more. The signal words, caution, warning, danger, and danger poison. I think we just have 3 though. Here's something relatively new. With the symbols, the number of angles, the more angles, the more dangerous the product is. So the upside down triangle is for caution, the diamond is for warning, and danger is the octagon. And I guess the skull and crossbones are still super dangerous. Okay, and the toxicity to your eyes and skin go from slight to severe. Okay. We're going to get into our pesticide labels now, and here are a couple of examples. Again, they're in these pretty boxes. And let's see. Okay, we got a couple more things to go through before we get to these. I guess these are a little out of order. Here we've got our signal words: caution, danger, warning, and danger. Okay, and here it gives you an idea of the quantity for danger. It's just a few drops to a teaspoon. When I was talking about aluminum phosphide a while ago, I read that it's like 50 drops per million parts that is toxic. So 50 drops to a million. That's pretty low. Okay. This is also in your handout, but if you want to just guess some before you look. Some symptoms of pesticide poisoning. Nausea, good. What about headache, blurry eyes, irritated throat, headache? Any other ideas? Rash? Yep, all those: vomiting, sweating, nervousness, weakness, difficulty breathing, reduced muscle coordination, rapid pulse. Okay, and we'll get into some chronic ones here. Cancer, allergies, birth defects, and organ damage from long-term exposure. Okay. So you want to Protect yourself, protect others, and protect the environment and non-targets. Here are some non-targets. And you know what we mean by non-target? It's something you don't intend to affect with your pesticide. So it could, grapevines are very susceptible to, I think, 2,4-D and maybe some other products. Kids, water, livestock, and fish. They can all be non-targets. And we'll talk a little bit later about how to protect those. So for example, you can leave a buffer zone around your sensitive areas so you don't like plant right up to the waterway there. Reduce drift, runoff, and root uptake. Be careful of pollinators, bees, the time of day that you spray and what you spray. Okay, restricted entry interval. Okay, who knows what the restricted entry interval, the REI?
How long you have to wait before you can go in there?
Right, it's the waiting period before you go back in once an area has been treated. And my husband has strict orders to keep the dog off the grass after our lawn company's been there. Okay, environmental hazards. You can see that there's some product that's washed off of a yard or a driveway or something, and it's going to go right down into the storm sewer. Okay. Pesticides can move by drift through the air, from overspraying, and from runoff. So the residues can burn or damage sensitive crops, cause a lot of complications with organic farmers, reduce the beneficial plant and animals, contribute to pesticide resistance. You hear a lot about certain weeds that are resistant to a lot of herbicides. I think there's 6 weeds now that field weeds are known to be resistant to various products that used to work great. Okay. The U.S. Geological Survey reports finding glyphosate and other herbicides in water, and California reports finding pyrethroids in surface waters. Okay. Storm water is the water or snow, melted snow that goes down the storm sewer. And what's one way of protecting what goes down into the storm sewer? Have you seen these little signs or caps that they put on and they say, oh, shoot. Here, this, it says, usually no dumping, drains to, and then it'll say a creek or a lake, or probably wouldn't be a lake, but a waterway. We've got one of these right outside our house. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Just a word about organic crops, such as grapes. They cannot have synthetic pesticides and remain organically certified. This includes pesticide drift. And if you may have some acreage people who call you with questions, the acreage owners may decide they want to plant a few grapes and make their wine. So if it's organic, it can't have any pesticide, even if it's accidental. Pyrethroids. In 2013, EPA created an initiative to minimize pyrethroid movement. And mostly what it sounds like they did is they made some changes to the label. So again, you have to read the label to know what is acceptable and safe. Pay attention to the weather and your sprinkler schedules to avoid runoff into the waterways and storm sewers. As lady said here, keep your products for your lawn on your lawn and don't allow them to get onto the sidewalk where it can go into the storm sewer. So just another warning or friendly warning here about drift. Okay, so you want to protect the environment and watch the how you apply and your products. The finer the mist or what you spray, the more it's going to travel. And medium to coarse size droplets will resist drifting. High temperatures and low relative humidity encourage drifting. And drift potential is lowest at winds from 3 to 10 miles an hour. In Nebraska, that's very rare. So here are some things that affect the droplet size or the affect drift. We've got droplet size, the wind speed, the distance from the nozzle to the target. If you're spraying way up here and your target's way down here, it's more likely to drift. Temperature and humidity and the soil conditions. So here's a word. Smaller droplets increase drift, stronger winds increase, greater distance increases, high temperatures and low relative humidity increase drift, and wet soil. I think it's just not going to go down and be absorbed. Is to drift. It wets. Yeah, it increases vapor drift. Yes, wet soil somehow does not drift.
It increases volatilization because if the soil is wet, the sun hits it, then if the herbicide is on the soil, then it's going to go up into the air. And if you apply herbicide at a high temperature, above 85 degrees, if it's going to get above 85 degrees the day you spray, then the plant can pick that up, but it will, in trying to keep itself cool, will volatilize the herbicide and it will still drift. And it can, 2,4-D can drift miles. I don't see how in the world a grower of grapes can ever assure that you're not going to have herbicide drift.
Okay, so that was a good explanation of when the you spray the herbicide and the temperature warms up, the plant will volatilize or kind of give off that herbicide, and then it can get into the atmosphere.
I can think of where.
Okay. Okay, sorry.
Okay. So the question here was how soil conditions affect drift, and there was a question as to how would that work. And another one of the master gardeners was talking about the off-gassing effect as temperatures increased, that a product would continue to off-gas if it wasn't readily absorbed into the soil or the plant material. Does that cover it, John?
Okay.
So could you identify what the ideal conditions are for it? For applying? Besides not using it. Yeah.
Rule of thumb is never in Nebraska.
I mean, that's.
So are you applying it to soil or?
live
So
on
I
a
missed
fa-
parts of the
I live on a
question, so.
farm, and I have a farmer. That comes over and puts his junk on my farm ground. And I guess I'd like to be able to monitor it and know when he shouldn't be doing it and when he should. So that's the
Well,
question of
so.
when is it appropriate?
So that's really the hard part. So if you are living on an acreage and you have a farmer that lives next door to you, which obviously most people who live on acreage do have a farmer of some kind, or farmland, agricultural land that is next to you, there's really not, unless you physically go and talk to that farmer and
No,
say,
he's my farmer.
well, then, so you're cash renting the land out. Okay. Then you have the right to go and say, please make sure that you're trying to be as environmentally friendly as you can. However, there's a caveat to that, and that's just the same as anybody working in a public landscape that is on a time crunch that has to get something done. It could be raining or windy for 3 weeks in a row in Nebraska. And you only have a specific amount of time to apply specific pesticides or herbicides or whatever. And they just have to do it. So there are times when they're probably actually not applying it at that ideal time. That is when they actually will probably increase the valve jet to make that droplet bigger. When that droplet is bigger, then it's not going to drift as far when it's blowing. If he's being conscious, he's probably already doing that. So
is it like 85 degrees or below and 10 miles wind speed and below? Or?
Well, it depends on what it is. And that's where the label will come in. I mean, there are some that you can apply when it's warmer outside than others. 2,4-D is one that volatilizes at a relatively medium, like 80 degrees, is when you really should stop doing 2,4-D, because it can start volatilizing very easily. But there are other ones that don't. So that's really where that label comes in handy, and you are really being very cognizant of what you are applying when you're applying it, weather conditions, all that kind of stuff. So like I said, it's maybe. I don't know. Who knows?
I do have to say, my nephew is a farmer, and he was saying, you know, we take so many precautions, and our equipment is state of the art. It is absolutely amazing. As he explained it to me, when they do a turn at the end, and the equipment immediately stops spraying the chemicals so they don't double spray it. He said, you need to look at these urban people and their green lawns, because they don't read the labels and they're not applying it correctly, and it's resulting in a lot of pollution into our stream.
We were talking about drift as an atmospheric phenomenon. Can you have drift through the soil? Is that called drift too?
That would be leaching.
That's leaching. Okay,
Yeah.
different word.
It would be a different word, but kind of same concept.
But I was thinking about systemic insecticide, merit, for instance.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yep, you can leach things through the soil. Tordon actually will leach from plant to plant. So if you have two plants next to each other, and you're trying to kill one shrubby plant, and those roots are actually crossed under the soil, you could potentially have death of the plant that you want to keep if you are applying Tordon. That has happened. So you really do need to be very cognizant of that also. So, yep, you can have collateral damage. And Tordon, you can buy ready to use over-the-counter Tordon. Tordon used to be restricted only, and you can actually go and buy it over the counter now. So, you know, yeah, it can happen. And like I said, and like Cheryl's been saying, read the label. I mean, that is your contract with both the EPA. So EPA, the federal government looks at it, and the state looks at it too. There are some chemicals that are registered in Colorado that you cannot use in Nebraska. So each state there then also has another level of checking out.
And I was just going to add in, I'm also an owner and also work for the USDA as a crop scout. And so with the 100% on, the farmers are the recipients of the training, and the lion's share of them have restricted use pesticide permits.
And commercial people.
Yeah. And the 21st century sprayer is already using high, large droplet size, low pressure, low nozzles to reduce drift. But of course, if you've got vines and that sort of thing, as I'm out in the country, you know, scouting and doing my thing, a lot of times if I go by vineyards, I see signs that says, hey, drift management, don't drift here. And then of course there's Drift Watch. If you have pollinators and that sort of thing, to get on the Drift Watch site and mark your land in the Drift Watch system.
Drift Watch only works for commercial though, not for private people. So if you're growing grapes for yourself, you can't apply it to, you can't go on Drift Watch.
Pollinators, and if you're growing grapes to sell, that's what I'm talking about.
Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. Some good points.
Did that
here.
help?
Yes. Okay. Thanks everybody for contributing to the discussion. Okay. And here are some ways to minimize drift and runoff. And just as we were talking about, using larger droplet size, adding drift control agents to the products, keep it below 10 miles an hour if you can, and lower pressures while spraying close to the surface. And then there's a series of things to protect water pesticide runoff in waters. And again, don't apply to wet soils or frozen soils. Gentleman mentioned driftwatch.org, and this is a volunteer communication tool for commercial growers designed to protect organic crops and gardens, bees, and fish from inadvertent pesticide drift. The DriftWatch users sign up each year so their operation is shown on a map, which we'll see. The idea is that pesticide applicators look at the map and know what areas to avoid or where to be extra careful. The growers are not required to post their operations, so there could be a lot more sites than are on the list. And DriftWatch is not a substitute for any state or regulatory requirements. And okay, so fieldwatch.com is a place where applicators can sign up, and they then are notified when new DriftWatch operators sign up. So you get a notice every time somebody new signs up. DriftWatch is a nonprofit company that offers mapping and communication tools. This is to help a successful coexistence of specialty producers and your traditional large-scale farmers. I think, as Terry said, communication is very important. You do need to talk to people about, you know, your situations, and I think most of the time people try to help each other out. But as she said, there's often a very small window of when farmers can actually get in there and treat their fields. But, nobody wants trouble. So these field watch and drift watch and even bee check is a beehive registry to help protect hives and bees from inadvertent pesticides. Okay, so here is a drift watch map, which anybody can see. You don't have to be registered to go look at this. These point where individuals have marked their beehives. I think that's the yellow bee. G is, I think, grapes. F is fruits. V is vegetables. There's nursery crops, orchard crops. And so when you are online, click on one of these pin drops and the producer name, type of operation, and contact information will come up. And here we have specialty certified organic Doug Dittman at Branched Oak Farm at Raymond. So that's the kind of information that will come up when you click on one of those pin drops. Okay. So you want to emphasize to put the right pesticide on at the right time, under the right conditions, and at the right place using the right equipment. Everything has to be right. Here is a EPA bee advisory box. This is an effort to help protect pollinators. The bee advisory box will appear on, or it appears on pesticide labels for products that contain imidacloprid, dinotefrin, clothianidin, and I'm not pronouncing that right, and various products. So it encourages applicators to minimize exposures to bees while they're foraging. And I think bees are out most during the daytime, so if you apply these products toward the evening or night. The neonic labels. EPA changed the labeling in 2014 to minimize exposure to bees using the pollinator protection box and to highlight safety measures to protect pollinators. And here is the symbol on protecting bees that you'll see on these products. Okay, and here's just the bees. This is bee check in Nebraska. This has probably changed since this was printed off. But as you can see, you can select for any products, fish, fruits, grapes, and just that will come up if you click on what you want from the list. So this is the bee hives in Nebraska for people who registered. Again, you don't have to register. Some people may not want others to know that they've got a specialty operation going. Okay, so back to some safety. Never transport pesticides in the passenger space of a closed vehicle. Allow passengers or pets to ride with pesticides or transport food with pesticides. If pesticide spills, you want to do the 3 C's, control, contain, and clean up. If the jug falls over, get it upright and then think about cleaning it up. And here's some kitty litter, trash bag, your protective clothing, a shovel, and get that all swept up and thrown away. And if you are so fortunate as to have a special place to keep your pesticides, that's really great. You can, if you don't have a special shed, then maybe even mark off a place in your garage or other place where you can store these products. Okay, and again, keep those products in their original container. Here we have some stories about people drinking paraquat, which is this blue product. It's not blueberry Kool-Aid or anything. It's highly poisonous. In the US, paraquat or gramaxamone is an RUP. It's dyed blue to kind of let people know that this is supposed to be not something that you drink. It's supposed to have an odor carrying agent to it so that you know that it's not something you're supposed to get in your system. And it's supposed to have an agent to cause vomiting. It is highly toxic, and from what I've read, if you drink it, you usually will die a very painful death. And here we have some instances of 2 charged after a man drinks the herbicide. And actually there are other instances here with involving children. This pesticide, paraquat, was in a Gatorade container. Here's a toddler who drank it. Here is a bottle in his father's work truck. Here's somebody, an adult, who drank, somehow got paraquat in his own coffee. And who knows what this Pepsi sold by strangers was about. So usually 7 to 14 days after you ingest this, it's over. Okay, so you want to make sure if you have any poisonous pesticides that nobody can get to them and use them for untoward purposes. Okay, and what do we have here? Okay, why do we have a hole in the pesticide container? So it can't be reused. So you want to triple rinse your pesticide containers, and these are probably more for large scale farming or commercial, but you want to triple rinse those and put the rinseate on what you would normally put the product on, and then you want to puncture those containers and recycle them if possible. And one of your handouts has, yours is black and white, but it's this trifold folder, trifold brochure that tells about hazardous waste collections. So you want to keep this handy. The next one is April 29th. There's one in April, May, June, 2 in June, 1 in September. And it looks like these do take herbicides and pesticides and insecticides. A lot of times these collections won't take those, but these will. Okay. And if you want to take down this site, it's the National Pesticide Information Center. National Pesticide Information Center. They have a lot of good information. We use that center information a lot. The URL is npic.orst for Oregon State.edu. So npic.orst.edu. And they have a lot of good information.